Derek Collins stares down the gaping maw of a massive serpentine creature, its razor-sharp teeth gleaming in the murky depths of Aquarius Prime's vast ocean. Everyone else flees in terror, but the human deep-sea explorer remains rooted in place, his curiosity overpowering any instinct for self-preservation. The beast's glowing eyes fix on Derek as he floats, exposed, outside his malfunctioning submersible. His heart races, not from fear, but from the thrill of discovery. This is why he came to this water-covered planet, to study its unique marine ecosystem and encounter the unexpected. Beside the terrifying creature swims a female denobulin, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with mesmerizing patterns. Princess Ava, as Derek will soon learn, commands the serpent with graceful hand gestures. The contrast between her ethereal beauty and the monster's ferocity is striking. Panic ripples through the nearby denobulin population. Their terror is palpable even through the dense water as they scatter, desperate to escape the princess and her fearsome pet. Derek observes their retreat with fascination, noting the stark difference between their reaction and his own. As Princess Ava and her serpentine companion approach, Derek struggles with his equipment. The submersible's malfunction has left him vulnerable, but he focuses on the potential for contact. No off-worlder has ever been this close to the notoriously reclusive denobulin royal family. The princess studies Derek with evident curiosity. His lack of fear sets him apart from her subjects. She raises a hand, and the massive creature beside her halts its advance. Derek seizes the moment, attempting to communicate through a series of hand signals and body language. The waters around them stir as the denobulin royal guard arrives, weapons at the ready. They surround Derek and the princess, their postures tense and hostile. The human explorer realizes the gravity of the situation. His actions now could shape the future of human-denobulin relations. Princess Ava's gaze flickers between Derek and her guards. The tension mounts as the armed denobulins prepare to forcibly remove the human intruder. Derek maintains his composure, his steady demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around him. With a single fluid motion, Princess Ava raises her hand. The guards freeze, their weapons still trained on Derek. The princess's interest in this fearless human is evident, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in what Derek interprets as intrigue. As they hover in the alien waters, Derek knows he stands at a crossroads. His unique approach and unwavering calm in the face of Aquarius Prime's most feared entities, the princess and her monstrous pet, have created an unexpected opportunity. The potential for a diplomatic breakthrough hangs in the balance, with Derek as the unlikely linchpin in interspecies relations. The human explorer steadies himself, acutely aware that his next actions could have far-reaching consequences, not only for humanity's future on this mysterious water world, but for the secretive denobulin society as well. As Princess Ava moves closer, her serpent coiling protectively around her, Derek prepares to bridge the gap between two worlds, one breath at a time. Derek's steady gaze met Princess Ava's luminous eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. With a graceful wave of her hand, the princess dismissed her guards, who reluctantly lowered their weapons. The massive serpent coiled protectively around her, its scales shimmering in the filtered sunlight that penetrated the ocean depths. "You are unlike any being I've encountered." Ava's melodious voice resonated through the water, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with curiosity. "What brings you to our world, human?" Derek's voice carried clearly through his equipment as he replied, "I'm a deep-sea explorer, Your Highness. I came to study Aquarius Prime's marine ecosystem. Your world is extraordinary." The princess tilted her head, intrigued. "And you show no fear in the face of our greatest predators. Fascinating." She gestured towards the palace looming in the distance, its spires and domes a marvel of aquatic architecture. "Come, my father will want to meet you." As they swam towards the royal residence, Derek marveled at the intricate coral formations and schools of iridescent fish that darted around them. The denobulin royal guards flanked them, their suspicious glances a reminder of the delicate situation. Upon entering the palace, Derek was awestruck by the bioluminescent corridors that pulsed with life. Elaborate murals depicted denobulin history, each scene coming alive with shifting colors and patterns. Advanced technology seamlessly integrated with the organic structure, creating a harmonious blend of nature and innovation. The throne room doors parted, revealing a vast chamber adorned with precious shells and rare aquatic plants. At its center sat King Zorn, his imposing figure radiating authority. His luminous markings glowed with an intensity that surpassed those of his subjects, a clear sign of his royal status. "Father," Princess Ava addressed the king, her tone respectful yet tinged with excitement, "I present to you Derek Collins, a human explorer who has shown great courage and respect in our waters." King Zorn's penetrating gaze fixed on Derek. "Step forward, human. What brings you to Aquarius Prime?" Derek approached, his movements careful and deliberate. "Your Majesty, I came to study your planet's unique marine life. As an explorer, I seek to understand and learn from new worlds and cultures. Your underwater civilization is unlike anything we've encountered before." The king leaned forward, intrigued. "And what do you hope to gain from this knowledge?" "Understanding, Your Majesty," Derek replied earnestly. "The more we learn about different worlds and species, the better we can coexist and support each other in this vast universe." King Zorn nodded slowly, his bioluminescent patterns shifting in thought. "Your words are wise, human, but our society has long valued its isolation. Your presence here is unprecedented." Princess Ava swam forward, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Father, Derek's unique perspective could be invaluable. Think of the insights an off-worlder could provide about our ecosystem, our place in the galaxy." The king considered his daughter's words, his gaze moving between Ava and Derek. After a long moment, he spoke. "Very well. Derek Collins, you may remain on Aquarius Prime as a cultural ambassador under strict supervision. Princess Ava will be your guide and liaison." Derek bowed his head in gratitude. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I promise to respect your customs and learn all I can about your magnificent world." As they left the throne room, Ava's excitement was palpable, her skin pulsing with vibrant patterns. "There's so much to show you, Derek. Our symbiotic relationship with the marine life, our aquaculture techniques, it's all quite extraordinary." Over the following days, Derek immersed himself in denobulan culture. Ava proved to be an enthusiastic guide, leading him through vast underwater gardens and explaining the intricacies of their sustainable farming methods. In turn, Derek shared stories of Earth's oceans and human achievements in marine exploration. During a visit to a bioluminescent coral reef, Ava's hand brushed against Derek's arm, sending a jolt of electricity through him. Their eyes met, and for a moment the rest of the world faded away. The growing attraction between them was undeniable, yet complicated by their physiological differences and respective responsibilities. As they explored a deep-sea thermal vent, Derek noticed Ava's concerned expression. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Ava sighed, her bioluminescence dimming slightly. "These vents are our primary energy source, but their use is causing imbalances in our ecosystem. We've been searching for alternatives, but so far..." Derek's mind raced with possibilities. What about that rare bioluminescent coral we saw earlier? Could its properties be harnessed for energy production? Ava's eyes widened, her skin brightening with excitement. That's brilliant. We've never considered using the coral that way. Derek, this could change everything. Their shared enthusiasm led them to embark on a joint research project, spending long hours studying the coral's unique properties. As they worked side by side, their bond deepened, transcending cultural and physical barriers. However, not everyone viewed Derek's presence favorably. High Counselor Vex, a prominent figure in the royal court, watched the humans' growing influence with mounting concern. In the shadows of the palace corridors, he whispered to his allies, "This off-worlder threatens our way of life. We must act before it's too late." Unaware of the political machinations surrounding them, Derek and Ava continued their research. During an expedition to collect coral samples from a deep trench, they encountered an unexpected threat, a group of poachers from a rival city-state, harvesting the precious coral with reckless abandon. We can't let them destroy this ecosystem, Ava said, her voice filled with drive. We have to stop them. Derek nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. Together, we might have a chance. Are you ready? As Ava's hand clasped his, their eyes met once more, a silent understanding passing between them. They were about to face a dangerous confrontation, one that would test their growing bond and potentially shape the future of Aquarius Prime. Derek and Ava swam silently through the murky waters, their eyes scanning for any sign of the poachers. The bioluminescent patterns on Ava's skin dimmed, camouflaging them in the darkness of the deep trench. As they rounded a coral formation, they spotted the group of unauthorized harvesters, their crude tools already damaging the delicate ecosystem. We need to stop them, Ava whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle current. Derek nodded, his mind racing with potential strategies. I have an idea, but it's risky. Can you use your bioluminescence to create a distraction? Ava's eyes widened with understanding. Yes, I think I can. What do you have in mind? As Derek explained his plan, they moved closer to the poachers, careful to remain hidden behind the vibrant coral structures. With a silent count of 3, Ava unleashed a dazzling display of light, her skin pulsing with intense, rapidly changing patterns. The sudden burst of illumination startled the poachers, momentarily blinding them in the usually dark depths. Seizing the opportunity, Derek swam swiftly towards the group's equipment, his movements precise and calculated. He quickly disabled their harvesting tools, rendering them useless. The poachers, still disoriented from Ava's light show, began to panic and scatter. As the chaos unfolded, Derek felt a sudden shift in the water around them. A low rumble reverberated through the trench, causing loose sediment to swirl around them. Ava's expression changed from triumph to concern. Derek, we need to leave now. That's a seismic tremor. It could trigger an underwater avalanche. They swam rapidly away from the unstable area, the poachers forgotten in the face of this new danger. The rumbling intensified, and Derek could see cracks forming in the rock face of the trench. Ava led them towards a small opening in the cliff wall, a hidden grotto she knew from her explorations. As they entered the safety of the grotto, a cascade of rocks and sediment rushed past the entrance, sealing them inside. The water around them gradually calmed, and they found themselves alone in the dim, enclosed space. Ava's bioluminescence provided a soft, pulsating light that illuminated their surroundings. The grotto was small but beautiful, its walls lined with delicate, shimmering crystals. In the intimate setting, Derek suddenly became acutely aware of Ava's proximity. Her eyes met his, and he saw a reflection of his own growing attraction. Are you all right? Ava asked, her voice soft and filled with concern. Derek nodded, his heart racing. Yes, thanks to you. That was quick thinking. Their bodies drifted closer in the gentle current, the tension between them palpable. Ava's hand brushed against Derek's arm, sending a shiver through him despite the warm water. Before he could second-guess himself, Derek leaned in, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a tentative kiss, the sensation unlike anything either of them had experienced before. Ava's bioluminescence flared brightly, casting a kaleidoscope of colors around the grotto. As they parted, both were breathless, the gravity of their actions settling in. I've wanted to do that for a while, Derek admitted, his voice husky. Ava's skin pulsed with a pattern Derek recognized as happiness. As have I, but this is complicated. Our physiologies, our cultures, there's so much standing between us. Derek gently caressed her cheek, marveling at the softness of her skin. We'll figure it out. Together. Their moment of intimacy was abruptly interrupted by another tremor, stronger than the first. The crystals on the grotto walls vibrated ominously, and small rocks began to fall from the ceiling. We need to find a way out, Derek said, instantly alert. He reached for his communication device only to find it damaged from the earlier rockfall. Can you contact anyone? Ava shook her head, her own device equally useless. The minerals in these rocks interfere with our communications. We're on our own. Derek's training kicked in as he assessed their situation. Okay, we need to stay calm and conserve our energy. I've done some cave diving back on Earth. Let's see if we can find an alternate exit. They began to explore the grotto, their hands intertwined as they navigated the darkening space. Derek's experience proved invaluable as he identified promising passages and potential hazards. Ava's knowledge of local marine life helped them avoid dangerous creatures that had sought refuge in the grotto during the seismic activity. As they ventured deeper into the network of underwater caves, the crystal-lined walls gave way to smooth, clearly artificial surfaces. Ava gasped, her bioluminescence flickering with excitement. "Derek, look! These are ancient denobulan markings. I've never seen anything like this before." They swam closer to examine the intricate symbols etched into the walls. Derek's scientific curiosity was piqued, momentarily overshadowing their dire situation. "What do they say?" Ava's eyes darted back and forth as she deciphered the ancient script. It's incredible. This talks about a time when denobulans could breathe both air and water. There's mention of a great transformation, a technology that allowed our ancestors to adapt to changing environments. Their excitement was cut short as another tremor shook the cavern. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber filled with strange, pulsating machinery. Before they could react, a beam of energy shot out, enveloping Derek in a shimmering field. "Ava!" Derek cried out, his body suddenly racked with pain. "What's happening?" Ava watched in horror as Derek's body began to change within the energy field. Gills started to form along his neck, and his skin took on a faint, bioluminescent quality. She could see the agony in his eyes as his physiology was forcibly altered. "Hold on, Derek, I'll find a way to stop it." Ava frantically searched the chamber, her eyes darting between the ancient technology and Derek's transforming body. She spotted a control panel covered in the same symbols they had seen earlier. As Ava worked to decipher the controls, Derek's transformation continued. He could feel his lungs changing, adapting to extract oxygen from water. The pain was excruciating, but through it all, he kept his eyes locked on Ava, drawing strength from her presence. Suddenly, Ava's head snapped up, her eyes wide with realization. "I think I've got it!" Her hands flew over the control panel, inputting a complex sequence of commands. The energy field surrounding Derek flickered and then dissipated. He collapsed to the cavern floor, gasping as his body adjusted to its new form. Ava swam to his side, cradling him in her arms. "Derek, can you hear me? Are you all right?" He opened his eyes, blinking in confusion. I think so. What happened?" Before Ava could respond, they heard the sound of approaching voices echoing through the cavern. The royal guard had found them. "Quick, we need to hide," Ava whispered urgently. She helped Derek to his feet, supporting him as they swam to a secluded alcove. From their hiding place, they watched as a group of armed guards entered the chamber, led by a stern-faced officer. "Search every corner," the officer commanded. "The human is to be apprehended on sight. He's suspected of espionage against the denobulan crown." Derek and Ava exchanged shocked glances. The gravity of their situation suddenly became clear. They were trapped. Derek was physically altered, and now he was being hunted as a potential enemy of the state. As the guards spread out to search the chamber, Ava's mind raced. She knew she had to make a choice, reveal herself and try to vouch for Derek, or remain hidden and seek another way to clear his name. The future of their relationship, and possibly of human-denobulan relations, hung in the balance. Derek squeezed her hand, his newly formed gills fluttering with each breath. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever they decided, they would face it together. Together. As the guards' footsteps grew louder, Derek and Ava exchanged a knowing glance. They had to act fast. "I have an idea," Ava whispered, her bioluminescence dimming to near invisibility. "Trust me." Before Derek could respond, Ava swam out from their hiding place, her royal presence immediately drawing the attention of the guards. "Princess Ava!" the lead guard exclaimed, surprise evident in his voice. "We've been searching for you. Are you all right?" Ava put on a convincing display of confusion and distress. I got lost during a solo expedition. These ruins are so vast and complex. I'm relieved you found me." The guards surrounded her, their weapons lowering as they focused on their princess. Ava cast a subtle glance towards Derek's hiding spot before addressing the lead guard again. We should return to the palace immediately. I'm sure my father is worried sick. We can organize a proper search party for the human later. As the guards began to escort Ava out of the chamber, Derek watched from the shadows, his heart racing. He marveled at Ava's quick thinking and felt a pang of longing as she disappeared from view. Alone in the ancient ruins, he took a moment to assess his new physical state. His gills fluttered with each breath, extracting oxygen from the water with surprising efficiency. His skin tingled with a faint bioluminescent glow, mimicking the patterns he'd seen on Ava's body. Despite the pain of the transformation, Derek felt a surge of exhilaration at his new abilities. Once certain the guards were gone, Derek began to explore the underwater caves, his deep-sea exploration skills kicking in. He moved with increasing confidence through the network of tunnels, his enhanced vision adapting to the low-light conditions. After navigating through a particularly narrow passage, Derek emerged into a vast, dimly lit cavern. The space buzzed with activity, and he quickly realized he wasn't alone. A group of denobulans huddled around various workstations, engrossed in what appeared to be complex scientific equipment. One of them, a female with intricate bioluminescent patterns, noticed Derek's presence. Her eyes widened in surprise, but her expression quickly shifted to one of intense curiosity. "Fascinating," she said, swimming closer to examine him. "You're the human everyone's been talking about, aren't you? But you're different now." Derek nodded instinctively on guard. "I am. And you are?" "I'm Zara, former royal scientist," she replied, her eyes gleaming with interest. "I was exiled for my controversial research on interspecies adaptation. And now, here you are, living proof that it's possible." As Zara explained her team's work on technology to allow denobulans to survive on land, Derek's mind raced with the implications. This could be the key to bridging the gap between their species, to creating a shared future for humans and denobulans. Meanwhile, back at the royal palace, Princess Ava strode purposefully into the throne room, her demeanor a mix of persistence and carefully controlled anger. King Zorn rose from his seat, relief evident on his face. "Ava, thank the depths you're safe," he said, moving to embrace his daughter. Ava accepted the hug briefly before pulling away. "Father, we need to talk. The accusations against Derek are false. We've discovered something incredible in the ancient ruins. Technology that could change everything for our people." Before she could continue, the doors to the throne room burst open. High Counselor Vex entered, his face a mask of concern. "Your Majesty, Princess," he said, bowing slightly. "I'm relieved to see you safe, Your Highness. However, I bring grave news. We have irrefutable evidence of the humans' espionage activities." Vex produced a series of documents and holographic displays, presenting them to the king. Ava watched in horror as her father's expression hardened, his eyes scanning the fabricated evidence. "Father, you can't possibly believe this," Ava protested. "Derek has done nothing but help our people since he arrived." King Zorn's face was a storm of conflicting emotions. "Ava, I understand your feelings, for the human may be clouding your judgment, but these documents, they're quite damning." "Your Majesty," Vex interjected smoothly, "I recommend we initiate a full-scale manhunt for the human. And for the princess's safety, it might be wise to restrict her movements until this crisis is purposed." Ava's eyes flashed with anger. "You can't be serious." King Zorn raised a hand, silencing her protest. "I'm sorry, Ava, but Vex is right. Guards, escort the princess to her chambers. She is not to leave without my explicit permission." As Ava was led away, she caught a glimpse of Vex's triumphant smirk. She knew then that there was more at play here than a simple misunderstanding. Something sinister was unfolding, and she was determined to uncover the truth. In the hidden laboratory, Derek worked alongside Zara and her team, learning to control his new amphibious abilities. As he practiced manipulating his bioluminescence, a commotion near one of the communication stations caught his attention. "We've intercepted a transmission," one of Zara's assistants called out. "It's encrypted, but it appears to be between High Counselor Vex and an unknown party outside the city." Derek swam over, his interest piqued. As Zara's team worked to decrypt the message, Fragments of the conversation became clear. Derek's blood ran cold as he realized the implications of what he was hearing. "Vex is planning a coup," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's working with rival city-states, promising them our technology in exchange for support." Zara's eyes widened with alarm. "This is worse than we thought. We need to warn the king immediately." Derek nodded, his purpose hardening. "I have to get back to the palace. But how? The entire city must be on high alert for me by now." Zara smiled, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. "I think it's time we put your new abilities to the test. Are you ready for a crash course in advanced denobulan stealth swimming?" As Derek prepared for his daring infiltration of the palace, Princess Ava paced in her chambers, her mind working furiously. She knew she had to find a way to expose Vex's treachery, but how? A soft chime from her communication device interrupted her thoughts. It was a message from one of the younger guards, someone she knew to be sympathetic to her cause. "Your Highness," the message read, "strange activity in the lower levels. Vex seen entering restricted areas multiple times. Something's not right." Ava's heart raced. This was the lead she needed. Using every ounce of her royal training in diplomacy and persuasion, she began to craft messages to other loyal guards and staff. Piece by piece, she started to assemble the puzzle of Vex's betrayal. As night fell on Aquarius Prime, the underwater city hummed with an undercurrent of tension. In the depths of the ancient ruins, Derek prepared to embark on his desperate mission. In her chambers, Ava continued to gather evidence against Vex. And in the shadows of the palace, Vex set his plans in motion, unaware that his carefully constructed plot was about to unravel. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of two worlds. As Derek slipped into the dark waters surrounding the palace, he knew that everything, his life, his love for Ava, and the future of human denobulan relations, hung in the balance. Balance. As Derek slipped into the dark waters surrounding the palace, he felt a surge of adrenaline course through his newly transformed body. His gills fluttered, effortlessly extracting oxygen from the water, while his bioluminescent skin pulsed faintly, helping him blend into the shadows. The city was in turmoil. Alarms blared through the water, their haunting wails distorted by the liquid medium. Derek could see denobulan guards swimming in frantic patterns, their own bioluminescence flashing urgently as they searched for him. Using his enhanced abilities, Derek propelled himself through the water with surprising speed and agility. He darted between towering coral structures and navigated through narrow crevices in the city's architecture, spaces too small for the pursuing guards to follow. As he approached the palace, Derek noticed something unusual. Scattered throughout the city were pockets of air, trapped in ornate bubbles sustained by advanced denobulan technology. These air pockets served as gathering spaces for denobulans, who preferred a terrestrial environment. Derek realized he could use these to his advantage. With a powerful kick, he breached the surface of one such air pocket, gasping as his lungs filled with air. The transition was jarring but exhilarating. He found he could breathe just as easily in air as in water, a testament to the incredible adaptation forced upon him by the ancient technology. Derek pulled himself onto a walkway, his wet skin glistening in the bioluminescent light. He could hear the muffled sounds of panic from outside the air pocket. The city's life support systems were failing, and chaos was spreading. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to him. "Derek, over here!" He turned to see Zara, the exiled royal scientist, emerging from a hidden panel in the wall. She clutched a sleek, high-tech device in her hands. "Zara, what are you doing here?" Derek asked, surprise evident in his voice. "I couldn't let you face this alone," she replied, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with excitement. "I brought something that might help us." She held up the device, explaining rapidly. "It's a prototype based on the ancient technology we discovered. It can temporarily grant air-breathing abilities to denobulans. We might need it to save the king and others in the palace." Derek nodded, understanding the implications. "Brilliant. We need to move fast. The city's systems are failing, and I'm sure Vex is behind it." Together, they made their way through the air pocket, using Zara's knowledge of the palace's hidden maintenance shafts to avoid detection. As they moved, Derek filled Zara in on what he had learned about Vex's coup attempt. They reached a junction where the maintenance shaft split into two paths. Zara pointed to the left. That leads to the life support control room. I can try to counteract the sabotage from there. Derek nodded. Good. I'll head to the royal chambers to find Ava and the king. Be careful, Zara. With a final nod, they parted ways. Derek plunged back into the water, his gills immediately adapting to the change. He swam swiftly through the palace corridors, his heart racing with every close call as he dodged patrolling guards. As he approached the royal chambers, Derek encountered a group of Vex's loyal guards. They spotted him, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in alarm. Derek didn't hesitate. He used his newfound agility to outmaneuver them, leading them on a wild chase through flooded sections of the palace. He weaved through ornate columns and darted through narrow passageways, always staying just out of reach. His actions drew the attention of more guards, creating the diversion he hoped would aid Zara's mission. Meanwhile, in her chambers, Princess Ava had been working tirelessly. Using her intimate knowledge of denobulan technology, she managed to hack into the palace's communication system. Her eyes widened as she intercepted messages between Vex and his co-conspirators, confirming her worst fears about the coup. Ava quickly recorded the evidence, her hands shaking with a mixture of anger and grit. She knew she had to get this information to her father immediately. The sounds of commotion outside her chambers caught her attention. Realizing the palace was in chaos, Ava saw her opportunity. She used the distraction to override the lock on her door, slipping out into the corridor. As Ava made her way towards the throne room, she could hear Vex's voice echoing through the halls. He was with her father, urging evacuation. Ava's heart raced, knowing that if her father left the palace, all would be lost. Suddenly, a figure burst around the corner, nearly colliding with her. Ava gasped, recognizing Derek despite his altered appearance. Without a word, they embraced, the intensity of their reunion palpable in the brief moment they allowed themselves. Ava, thank the depths you're safe, Derek whispered, his gills fluttering with each breath. Derek, your transformation. It's incredible, Ava marveled, her hand gently touching his face. But there's no time. Vex is with my father in the throne room. We have to stop him. Together they raced towards the throne room, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. As they approached, they could hear Vex's persuasive tones, urging King Zorn to evacuate. With a shared look of purpose, Derek and Ava burst through the doors of the throne room. King Zorn and Vex turned, shock evident on their faces. Father! Ava called out, her voice ringing with authority. Do not listen to Vex. He is a traitor. Derek stepped forward, his altered appearance causing a stir among the guards present. Your Majesty, we have uncovered a plot against the crown. Vex is attempting a coup. Ava quickly presented the evidence she had gathered, projecting the intercepted communications for all to see. King Zorn's face hardened as he absorbed the damning information. Vex, realizing his plan was unraveling, reached for a hidden device in his robes. You leave me no choice, he snarled, activating the device. The palace shook violently, and a deep, ominous rumble filled the air. Derek's enhanced senses picked up the sound of rushing water. He's breached the outer wall, he shouted. The palace is flooding. As water began to pour into the throne room, chaos erupted. Guards scrambled to protect the king, while others fled in panic. Derek's amphibious abilities suddenly became crucial as he organized an evacuation, guiding people towards the air pockets he had discovered earlier. Amidst the mayhem, Zara arrived, clutching her prototype device. Your Majesty, she called out to King Zorn, this can protect you from the flood. We need to move now. As the water level rose rapidly, Derek and Ava worked in perfect synchronization, their bond evident in their coordinated efforts to save lives. They guided survivors through the flooding corridors, using Derek's transformed abilities to navigate the treacherous waters. The denobulans watched in awe as the human they had once distrusted now risked everything to save them. Derek's selfless actions began to shift their perceptions, opening the possibility for a new era of human-denobulan relations. As they fought against time and the rising waters, Derek, Ava, and Zara managed to lead a group of survivors, including King Zorn, to a large air pocket deep within the palace. They sealed the entrance, creating a temporary safe haven. Exhausted and dripping, the group gathered their wits. King Zorn, visibly shaken by the events, turned to Derek and Ava. "It seems I have much to reconsider," he said gravely. "About Vex, about our kingdom's future, and about our relationship with humans." Derek and Ava exchanged a look, knowing that this was just the beginning. The city was in crisis, Vex was still at large, and the ancient technology that had transformed Derek held both promise and peril. As the group caught their breath in the safety of the air pocket, they knew that the real challenge of saving Aquarius Prime and reshaping the future of two worlds was just beginning. As the group caught their breath in the safety of the air pocket, they knew that the real challenge of saving Aquarius Prime and reshaping the future of two worlds was just beginning. The air pocket trembled as another aftershock rippled through the palace. Derek's enhanced senses picked up the sound of creaking metal and rushing water in the distance. He turned to King Zorn, his expression grave. "Your Majesty, we need to act quickly. The damage to the city is extensive, and there are likely many denobulans trapped in flooded areas." King Zorn nodded, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with worry. "You're right, Derek, but how can we possibly coordinate a rescue effort in this chaos?" Derek's eyes gleamed with tenacity. "I can lead search and rescue operations. My new abilities allow me to navigate both flooded areas and air pockets. We can use this to our advantage." Ava stepped forward, her hand resting on Derek's arm. "And I can work with Zara to adapt the ancient technology. If we can create a device to grant air-breathing abilities to more denobulans, we can evacuate flooded areas more efficiently." King Zorn looked between the two of them, a mix of pride and concern on his face. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Very well. Derek, organize rescue teams immediately. Ava, you and Zara have my full support for your research. We must act swiftly to save our people." Derek wasted no time. He gathered a group of capable denobulans and began outlining a strategy. Using his knowledge of the palace layout and his new amphibious abilities, he mapped out search patterns for the rescue teams. "We'll start with the lower levels and work our way up," Derek explained, his gills fluttering as he spoke. "I'll take point in the flooded areas. When we find survivors, we'll guide them to the nearest air pocket. Remember, time is critical." The rescue teams dispersed, led by Derek. He plunged into the floodwaters, his transformed body cutting through the currents with ease. As he swam through the submerged corridors, he could hear muffled cries for help. Derek approached a group of trapped denobulans, their bioluminescence flickering weakly in the murky water. He gestured for them to follow, leading them through a maze of debris to a nearby air pocket. The denobulans gasped as they breached the surface, looking at Derek with a mixture of awe and gratitude. One of the rescued denobulans, an elderly female, touched Derek's arm. "Thank you, human. We misjudged your kind." Derek offered a small smile before diving back into the floodwaters, his mind already on the next rescue. Meanwhile, in a makeshift laboratory, Ava and Zara worked feverishly on adapting the ancient technology. Holographic displays flickered around them, showing complex molecular structures and energy patterns. "If we can stabilize the quantum matrix," Ava mused, her fingers dancing over a control panel, "we might be able to create a field effect that could cover a larger area." Zara nodded, her eyes fixed on a simulation running before her. "Yes, but we need to be careful not to overload the power source. The consequences could be catastrophic." As they worked, King Zorn's voice echoed through the air pocket, broadcasted on all available channels. "People of Aquarius Prime, I speak to you in our darkest hour. High Counselor Vex has betrayed us, sabotaging our city in an attempt to seize power. But we will not fall. Even now, brave individuals are working to save our people and our home." The king's voice grew stronger as he continued. "Among these heroes is Derek, a human who has risked everything to help us. His actions prove that we have more to gain from cooperation than isolation. Together, we will overcome this crisis and forge a new future for Aquarius Prime." The announcement sent ripples through the surviving population. In the flooded corridors, Derek could see the change in the denobulans' expressions as he led them to safety. The fear and suspicion in their eyes gave way to hope and respect. However, Not everyone welcomed this shift. As Derek guided a group of survivors through a partially flooded section, he encountered a blockade. A group of denobulans, their bioluminescent patterns flashing angrily, barred the way. "Stop!" one of them called out. "We won't allow this human to corrupt our way of life. Our people have survived for millennia without outside interference." Derek raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not here to change your way of life. I'm here to save lives. Please let us pass. These people need medical attention." The standoff intensified, with the conservative denobulans refusing to budge. The survivors behind Derek grew restless, their breathing labored in the dwindling air pocket. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Stand aside!" Princess Ava emerged from the floodwaters, her gills fluttering as she took in air. The conservative denobulans gasped, stunned by the sight of their princess breathing air like the human. Ava's eyes met Derek's, a silent understanding passing between them. She turned to address the blockade. "Look at what we can achieve when we work together. This human has saved countless lives today. Are you prepared to undo that good work with your fear and prejudice?" The conservatives hesitated, their purpose wavering. Ava's transformation and her impassioned words began to sway them. Slowly, they stepped aside, allowing Derek and the survivors to pass. As they moved on, Derek squeezed Ava's hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "But how did you—" Ava smiled, her bioluminescence pulsing softly. "Zara's prototype. We needed to test it, and I couldn't let you face this alone." Their moment was interrupted by an urgent message from Zara. "Princess Derek, you need to return to the laboratory immediately. I've made a discovery that could change everything." As they raced back through the floodwaters, Derek and Ava knew that their challenges were far from finished. The fate of Aquarius Prime hung in the balance, and the true test of their love and leadership was yet to come. As Derek and Ava raced back to the laboratory, the weight of their mission pressed heavily upon them. They arrived to find Zara hunched over a complex array of holographic displays, her face etched with concern. "What's the situation, Zara?" Ava asked, her gills still fluttering from the swim. Zara looked up, her eyes wide. "I've made a breakthrough in understanding the ancient technology, but it's not all good news. The quantum matrix that allows for the amphibious transformation is highly unstable. Without a constant supply of a specific mineral to power it, the effects will begin to reverse." Derek felt a twinge in his chest, a sharp pain that made him wince. "I think I'm already feeling the effects," he said, his voice strained. Zara nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so. We need to act quickly if we want to stabilize your condition and harness this technology for wider use." Before they could discuss further, a royal attendant burst into the laboratory. "Your Highness," he addressed Ava, "King Zorn requests your presence immediately. The delegates from the other city-states have arrived for the emergency summit." Ava exchanged a worried glance with Derek. "We'll be right there," she said, taking Derek's hand. As they made their way to the grand meeting hall, Derek's discomfort grew. Each step sent waves of pain through his body, and he could feel his gills struggling to function. Ava squeezed his hand, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with concern. They entered the meeting hall to find it already buzzing with activity. Representatives from 5 major city-states of Aquarius Prime had gathered, their diverse bioluminescent patterns creating a dazzling display. King Zorn sat at the head of the assembly, his regal bearing commanding respect even in these dire circumstances. As Ava and Derek took their places beside the king, a hush fell over the room. King Zorn stood, his voice resonating with authority. "Esteemed delegates, we face an unprecedented crisis. The recent attack on our city has exposed both our vulnerabilities and our potential for growth. We have called this summit to discuss the path forward for Aquarius Prime." Derek tried to focus on the king's words, but the pain in his chest was intensifying. He gritted his teeth, determined not to show weakness in front of the delegates. As the discussion progressed, Ava stepped forward to present their findings on the ancient technology. Her voice rang clear and confident as she outlined the potential benefits of human denobulan cooperation. "This technology could revolutionize our society," she said, her eyes sparkling with passion. Imagine being able to explore both water and air freely. The advancements in science, culture, and diplomacy would be immeasurable. Her words were met with a mix of excited murmurs and skeptical frowns. Chancellor Mira, known for her progressive views, leaned forward with interest. This is indeed fascinating, Princess Ava. But what of the risks? How can we be sure this technology is safe? Before Ava could respond, a sharp cry cut through the hall. Derek had collapsed to the floor, his body convulsing violently. His gills were visibly shrinking, struggling to process the water around him. Ava rushed to his side, cradling his head in her lap. "Derek, hold on, please!" The hall erupted into chaos. Some delegates recoiled in horror, while others leaned in, fascinated by the sight of the human's transformation reversing. Amidst the commotion, Zara burst into the room, clutching a datapad. "Your Majesty, delegates, I have urgent news," she shouted over the din. "The ancient technology is powered by a rare mineral found only in the deepest trenches of Aquarius Prime. Recent seismic activity has disrupted its natural formation. Without a fresh supply, we cannot stabilize the transformation process or expand its use." King Zorn's face hardened as he processed this information. He raised his hand, calling for silence. "We must act swiftly," he declared. "I propose a joint expedition to these deep trenches. We will retrieve this mineral and secure the future of this technology." The delegates erupted into heated debate. Chancellor Mira's voice rose above the others. "I support this proposal. We cannot let fear hold us back from progress." However, Councillor Thax, a conservative leader from a neighboring city-state, objected vehemently. "This is madness. We cannot risk our resources and lives for unproven technology, let alone for an off-worlder." As the argument intensified, Ava worked frantically with Zara to stabilize Derek's condition. They managed to slow the deterioration, but it was clear that only the rare mineral could provide a permanent solution. Ava stood, her eyes blazing with drive. "I will lead this expedition myself," she announced, silencing the room. "The future of Aquarius Prime depends on our ability to adapt and grow. We cannot cling to old prejudices in the face of new possibilities." Her words hung in the air, challenging the assembled delegates to see beyond their traditional boundaries. As they prepared to vote on the proposed expedition, the fate of Derek, the ancient technology, and the future of human-denobulan relations hung in the balance. Balance. The room held its breath as the delegates prepared to cast their votes. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the chamber. A royal guard rushed in, his bioluminescent patterns flashing urgently. "Your Majesty, seismic activity near the trench has increased dramatically. We must act now if we hope to retrieve the mineral safely." King Zorn's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the room. "We have no time for further debate. I hereby authorize the expedition. Princess Ava, assemble your team immediately." Within hours, Ava had gathered a small group of skilled denobulans and outfitted a submersible for the perilous journey. Derek, still weak but determined, insisted on joining the mission. As they descended into the murky depths, Ava piloted the craft with practiced ease. Derek sat beside her, monitoring the external sensors. The rest of the team, a mix of scientists and security personnel, worked diligently at their stations. "Approaching the trench now," Ava announced, her voice tense. "Everybody, brace for turbulence." The submersible plunged into the trench, buffeted by powerful underwater currents. Derek gripped his console, fighting waves of nausea as his body struggled with the lingering effects of his unstable transformation. "Volcanic activity increasing," one of the denobulan scientists called out. "Temperature rising rapidly in Sector 3. Ava's hands flew over the controls, adjusting their course to navigate around a plume of superheated water. "Derek, I need you to reroute power to the forward shields," she said, her eyes never leaving the view screen. Derek nodded, his fingers dancing across the console. As he worked, he noticed several of the denobulans watching him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. He could almost hear their unspoken question. "Can we really trust this human with our lives?" A violent tremor rocked the submersible, nearly throwing Derek from his seat. Alarms blared as the craft's systems struggled to compensate. "We've reached the mineral deposit," Ava announced, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "But these vents, They're too narrow for the submersible. Derek studied the sensor readings, his mind racing. We'll have to go out there, he said, turning to Ava. In suits. Ava nodded, her expression grim. I'll lead the extraction team. Derek, you're with me. As they donned their specialized deep-sea suits, Derek couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He ran a quick diagnostic on his suit but found no issues. Brushing off his concerns as paranoia, he joined Ava at the airlock. The moment they exited the submersible, Derek was struck by the alien beauty of their surroundings. Bioluminescent creatures pulsed in the darkness, their soft glow revealing a maze of twisting vents and rocky outcroppings. Ava's voice crackled through his helmet's comm system. Stay close. These currents are treacherous. They swam carefully through the labyrinth, following the increasing concentration of the mineral they sought. As they rounded a corner, Derek's breath caught in his throat. Before them stretched a vast field of crystalline structures, glowing with an inner light. Incredible, Ava whispered, her awe evident, even through the distortion of the comm. As they approached the largest cluster of crystals, Derek noticed movement in his peripheral vision. He turned to see a swarm of strange, eel-like creatures undulating towards them, their bodies emanating a soft, pulsating light. Ava, look out! Derek called, pulling her back as the creatures formed a living barrier around the mineral deposit. Ava studied the creatures intently. They seemed to be feeding on the mineral's energy, she observed. We need to find a way past them without causing harm. Derek's mind raced, drawing on his years of deep-sea exploration. I have an idea, he said, reaching for a piece of equipment on his belt. We can use this emergency beacon to create a light source that mimics the mineral's energy signature. It might lure them away long enough for us to access the deposit. As Derek worked to modify the beacon, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. His breathing became labored, and warning lights flashed inside his helmet. With growing horror, he realized his oxygen supply was rapidly depleting. Ava, he gasped, his vision blurring. My suit, something's wrong. Ava turned to him, her eyes widening as she saw his distress. Without hesitation, she reached for her own helmet, unlatching it in one swift motion. What are you doing? Derek protested weakly. Saving your life, Ava replied, pressing her face close to his and sharing her breath. Her gills fluttered as she processed the water around them, providing oxygen for them both. As they huddled together, faces mere inches apart, Derek felt a surge of gratitude and affection for the Denobulan princess. Their eyes locked, an unspoken connection forming between them. A violent tremor shook the cavern, sending debris raining down around them. Ava pulled Derek close, shielding him with her body as rocks clattered against their suits. When the dust settled, they found themselves cut off from the rest of the team, trapped in a small pocket surrounded by scalding vents. The others, Derek coughed, still struggling to breathe normally. Are they... Ava shook her head, her expression grim. Communications are down. We're on our own. As they clung to each other in the swirling currents, the reality of their situation sank in. Trapped in a hostile environment, with limited air and no way to contact their team, Ava and Derek faced their greatest challenge yet. The fate of two worlds rested on their shoulders, and time was running out. The fate of two worlds rested on their shoulders, and time was running critically short. Derek's mind raced, weighing their options. The massive mineral deposit lay tantalizingly close, but their immediate survival hung by a thread. He locked eyes with Ava, an unspoken understanding passing between them. We can't leave empty-handed, Ava said, her voice tight with urgency. But we can't stay here either. Derek nodded, his heart made. We'll take what we can carry and find a way out. Working swiftly, they began to improvise. Derek detached a small storage compartment from his damaged suit, while Ava used her knowledge of Denobulan biology to extract bioluminescent secretions from the nearby creatures. Together, they fashioned makeshift containers to hold the precious mineral. As they gathered samples, the volcano's fury intensified. The chamber shook violently, causing superheated geysers to erupt around them. Derek's years of deep-sea exploration kicked in, his eyes darting between the bubbling vents. Watch out, he shouted, pulling Ava back just as a geyser erupted where she had been standing. There's a pattern to these eruptions. Follow my lead. Ava marveled at Derek's ability to predict the geyser patterns, allowing them to navigate the treacherous terrain more safely. They moved in sync, dodging jets of scalding water and gathering mineral samples with practiced efficiency. Meanwhile, aboard the submersible, tension reached a breaking point. Chancellor Mira stood over the cowering form of Zorn, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with hardly restrained rage. "Who put you up to this?" she demanded, her voice cold as the depths surrounding them. Zorn trembled, his drive crumbling under the weight of his actions. "It was Counselor Thax," he confessed, his words tumbling out in a rush. "But it's worse than you think. He's made a deal with the Zygons." A collective gasp rippled through the submersible's crew. The Zygons, a notoriously aggressive alien species, had long been considered a potential threat to Aquarius Prime. "What kind of deal?" Chancellor Mira pressed, her eyes narrowing. "Exclusive access to our planet's resources," Zorn replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "In exchange for advanced weaponry." The revelation sent shockwaves through the team. This wasn't just about human denobulin relations anymore. The very sovereignty of their planet was at stake. Back in the chamber, Derek and Ava had just finished collecting their mineral samples when a massive tremor rocked the cavern. Rocks rained down around them, and to their horror, their planned exit route collapsed in a thunderous avalanche. "We're trapped!" Ava exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. Derek scanned the chamber frantically, his heart pounding. Then he spotted it, a narrow fissure in the chamber wall, barely visible in the dim light. "There," he pointed. "It's tight, but it might be our only way out." They rushed to the fissure, peering into its depths. The opening was barely wide enough for one person to squeeze through at a time. "You go first," Derek insisted, pressing the mineral samples into Ava's hands. Ava shook her head vehemently. "I can't leave you behind." "You have to," Derek urged. "You're the princess. Your people need you, and you're the one who can use this mineral to help them." Another violent tremor cut their argument short. The chamber groaned ominously around them. "Go!" Derek shouted, helping Ava into the fissure. With a final, anguished look back, Ava began to navigate the tight passageway. The heat intensified as she squeezed through, the bioluminescent coating on her suit starting to deteriorate under the extreme conditions. Derek watched anxiously as Ava disappeared from view. He prepared to follow, but a sudden shift in the volcanic activity sent a flood of superheated water rushing into the chamber. He was forced to retreat, losing sight of the fissure in the chaos. The chamber filled rapidly with scalding water. Derek fought to stay afloat, his oxygen supply critically low. As the reality of his situation sank in, he felt a mix of fear and acceptance wash over him. He had helped Ava escape. He had secured the mineral samples. Even if this was the end, he had accomplished his mission. Ava emerged from the fissure into another cavern, gasping for breath. The submersible's sensors quickly detected her, and the rescue team rushed to her location. As they approached, Ava's eyes darted frantically behind her. "Derek," she panted. "He's still in there. We have to go back." The rescue team hesitated, torn between their duty to the princess and the danger of the unstable caverns. But Ava's persistence was unwavering. "I won't leave without him," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. Moved by her loyalty, the team began formulating a plan. They would use the submersible's advanced drilling equipment to cut through the rock and reach Derek. As the rescue attempt commenced, Derek's situation grew increasingly dire. The chamber was almost entirely flooded, leaving him with only a small pocket of air. In a desperate move, he activated his suit's emergency beacon, sending out a powerful sonar pulse. The pulse had an unexpected effect on the bioluminescent creatures surrounding him. They began to swarm, their combined glow intensifying to an almost blinding level. This vivid light show penetrated the rock, creating a beacon for the rescue team to follow. Ava, watching the drilling operation from inside the submersible, spotted the intense glow. Her heart leapt with hope. "There!" she shouted, pointing at the display. "That has to be him." The drill broke through just as Derek's air pocket was about to disappear. In a flurry of movement, the rescue team extracted him from the flooding chamber. He was weak and injured, but alive, still clutching his share of the mineral samples. As Derek was pulled into the submersible, His eyes immediately sought out Ava. Their gazes locked, and for a moment the chaos around them faded away. Without a word they embraced, the intensity of their shared ordeal reflected in their eyes. The tender moment was short-lived, however, as the submersible's alarms blared to life. The underwater volcano was about to erupt, and they were directly in its path. "Everyone, brace for emergency ascent," the pilot shouted, his hands flying over the controls. The submersible shot upwards, narrowly outpacing a massive underwater pyroclastic flow. The vessel shuddered and groaned under the strain, but held together as they raced towards safer waters. As the danger receded, the team began to process the magnitude of their discoveries. They had secured the rare mineral, potentially revolutionizing denobulan society, but the revelation of Counselor Thax's betrayal added a new urgency to their mission. Derek and Ava sat side by side, their hands intertwined. They had survived the depths, but as the submersible continued its ascent, they knew the challenges awaiting them on the surface would be just as daunting. The political fallout of their discoveries, the threat posed by Counselor Thax and the Zygons, and the future of their own relationship in a rapidly changing Aquarius Prime all loomed on the horizon. As the first glimmers of sunlight began to filter through the water above them, Derek squeezed Ava's hand. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Together. The gentle hum of the submersible's engines filled the air as they ascended, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. As the vessel breached the surface, sunlight streamed through the portholes, illuminating the weary but triumphant faces of the expedition team. Derek squinted, his eyes adjusting to the brightness after hours in the murky depths. Ava's hand remained intertwined with his, a comforting anchor in the aftermath of their ordeal. The submersible glided towards the towering spires of the royal palace, its gleaming surfaces reflecting the sunlight like a beacon. As they approached, Derek noticed a flurry of activity on the docking platform. A delegation led by a regal figure he assumed to be King Zorn awaited their arrival. The moment the submersible secured its docking clamps, the hatch hissed open. Derek and Ava emerged, followed closely by Chancellor Mira and the rest of the team. King Zorn stepped forward, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with a mix of relief and concern. "Daughter," he said, embracing Ava, "I'm relieved to see you safe." His gaze shifted to Derek, curiosity evident in his eyes. "And you must be the human who has aided us so greatly." Before Derek could respond, he felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. He stumbled, his legs suddenly weak. Ava caught him, her face etched with worry. "Derek!" she cried, supporting his weight. "Father, he needs medical attention immediately." King Zorn's expression hardened as Chancellor Mira quickly briefed him on their discoveries and Counselor Thax's betrayal. He turned to his guards, issuing rapid-fire orders. "Secure the city. I want Thax and his associates found and detained." "Discreetly," he added, his voice low and urgent. As the guards dispersed, Ava and Zara, the exiled royal scientist, helped Derek towards the palace. His breathing had become labored, his skin taking on a sickly pallor. "Hold on, Derek," Ava whispered, her voice tight with fear. "We're almost there." They rushed through ornate corridors, passing startled denobulan officials and servants. Zara led them to a secure laboratory deep within the palace, its walls lined with advanced equipment that hummed with awe-inspiring energy. Derek collapsed onto an examination table, his body convulsing as it struggled to maintain its amphibious adaptations. Ava gripped his hand tightly, her eyes never leaving his face as Zara began analyzing the mineral samples they had retrieved. "We need to stabilize him," Zara muttered, her fingers flying over holographic displays. "The mineral's effects are wearing off faster than anticipated." Ava worked alongside Zara, her royal training forgotten as she became a lab assistant, passing instruments and monitoring Derek's vital signs. Time seemed to stretch as they worked, the steady beat of Derek's heart monitor a constant reminder of the stakes. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the palace. Ava's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. A holographic projection flickered to life, showing King Zorn's grim face. "Thax has escaped custody," he announced, his voice tight with anger. "He's activated sleeper agents throughout the city. Critical systems are being sabotaged as we speak." Ava's heart raced, torn between her duty to her people and her desperate need to save Derek. She looked down at his pale face, his breathing growing more labored by the minute. "We're close to synthesizing the treatment," Zara said, her voice cutting through Ava's turmoil. "But we need more time." Ava straightened, her mind focused. "Then we'll buy you that time. Keep working. Save him." She turned to the holographic image of her father. "I'm on my way to the command center. We'll coordinate our defense from there." As Ava rushed from the lab, the city around her descended into chaos. Through the palace windows, she could see power outages rippling across Aquarius Prime's domed structures. The normally crystal-clear waters surrounding the city grew murky as purification systems failed. In the command center, King Zorn and Chancellor Mira were coordinating with other city-states, their voices raised as they debated strategy. Ava joined them, quickly assessing the situation. "We need to protect our critical infrastructure," she said, pointing to a holographic map of the city, "and start evacuating civilians from the affected areas." As they worked, Ava's thoughts kept drifting back to Derek. She prayed to the ancient Denobulan gods that Zara would succeed in synthesizing the treatment in time. In the lab, Zara worked feverishly, her hands steady despite the pressure. She had just finished refining the mineral into a usable form when Derek's monitor began to wail. His body was shutting down, unable to process oxygen from both air and water. Zara rushed to his side, the vial of refined mineral clutched in her hand. Without hesitation, she administered the treatment, watching anxiously as Derek's body absorbed the shimmering liquid. For several agonizing moments, nothing happened. Then Derek's body began to convulse violently, his back arching off the table. Zara held her breath, monitoring his vital signs closely. Suddenly, Derek gasped, his eyes flying open. His gills fluttered, working in perfect harmony with his lungs. The color returned to his cheeks as his body stabilized. "Ava," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Where's Ava?" Before Zara could respond, the lab door burst open. Ava stood there, her eyes wild with fear and hope. Seeing Derek awake and alert, she rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. "You're alive," she breathed, cupping his face in her hands. "I thought I'd lost you." Their reunion was cut short by another blaring alarm. King Zorn's voice echoed through the palace communication system. "Thax has been cornered in the central power core," he announced, "but he's threatening to overload the reactor. We need a team to stop him immediately." Derek sat up, wincing slightly but drive clear in his eyes. "We have to go," he said, looking at Ava. "Your people need us." Ava hesitated, torn between protecting Derek and her duty to Aquarius Prime. But as she gazed into his eyes, she saw the same courage and purpose that had drawn her to him in the first place. "Together," she said, helping him to his feet. As they rushed from the lab, ready to face this new threat, neither of them could have imagined the true scale of the danger that awaited them. The fate of Aquarius Prime hung in the balance, and the next few hours would determine the future of both their worlds. World and their relationship hung in the balance. As they raced through the palace corridors, alarms blared, and panicked voices echoed around them. They burst into the command center, finding King Zorn and Chancellor Mira huddled over a holographic display of the city. The image flickered with ominous red indicators, signaling multiple breaches in Aquarius Prime's defenses. "Father!" Ava called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "What's happening?" King Zorn looked up, his face etched with worry. "The Zygons have launched a full-scale invasion. Their fleet is entering our atmosphere as we speak." Derek stepped forward, his mind racing. "Your Majesty, what's our current defensive strategy?" Chancellor Mira answered, her voice tight with stress. "We're evacuating civilians to the underwater bunkers, but our military forces are stretched thin." Derek's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display. Years of military training kicked in, and he saw an opportunity where others saw only crisis. "I have an idea," he said, his voice steady and determined. "We can use the ancient technology that saved my life to create a team of amphibious warriors. They'd be able to move between water and air, giving us a tactical advantage over the Zygons." King Zorn's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with interest. "Explain further." Derek quickly outlined his plan, describing how a small, elite force could exploit the Zygon's weakness in Aquarius Prime's unique environment. As he spoke, Ava watched him with a mixture of pride and concern, knowing the dangers that lay ahead. "It's risky," King Zorn said after a moment's consideration, "but it may be our best chance. Chancellor, have Zara begin the adaptation process immediately. Select our most skilled warriors for the transformation." As the command center erupted into action, Derek and Ava shared a look. Without a word, they both knew they would be at the forefront of this dangerous mission. They made their way to the armory, where advanced denobulan battlesuits awaited them. As they donned the sleek, form-fitting armor, Ava reached out and took Derek's hand. "Derek," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "Whatever happens out there, I want you to know." He silenced her with a gentle kiss. "I know," he whispered. "We'll face this together, just like everything else." Suited up and ready for battle, they joined the newly transformed amphibious warriors. The group moved swiftly through the city's underwater transport tubes, emerging into the churning seas beyond the dome. Above them, the sky burned with the entry trails of Zygon ships. Derek watched as the alien vessels struggled against Aquarius Prime's dense atmosphere and turbulent waters. A plan began to form in his mind. "We need to take out their command ship," he said, pointing to the largest vessel hovering above the city. "If we can disable it, we might be able to throw their entire invasion into disarray." Ava nodded, her royal training kicking in as she assumed a leadership role. "There's an old tunnel system that runs beneath the city. We can use it to get close without being detected." Leading the team through the underwater labyrinth, Derek marveled at how naturally he now moved through the water. The mineral treatment had changed him, making him truly at home in this alien world. As they navigated the tunnels, they encountered massive, glowing creatures rising from the depths. Ava recognized them as the same species they had encountered in the trench. The beasts seemed agitated, disturbed by the invasion above. Acting on instinct, Ava swam closer to the creatures. She focused, causing her bioluminescent skin patterns to pulse in a rhythmic sequence. To Derek's amazement, the creatures responded, their own lights flickering in what seemed like communication. "They understand," Ava said, her voice filled with wonder. "They know the Zygons are a threat, and they want to help." With the aid of these unexpected allies, Derek's team formulated a plan. The bioluminescent giants would create a distraction, drawing the Zygon's attention away from the command ship. Meanwhile, Derek would lead a small strike force to infiltrate the vessel. As they prepared to execute their plan, Derek turned to Ava. "I need you to coordinate with the ground forces," he said. "Use your authority as princess to rally our defenses." Ava hesitated for a moment, clearly torn between her duty and her desire to stay with Derek. Finally, she nodded. "Be careful," she said, squeezing his hand before swimming towards the city. Derek watched her go, then turned to his strike team. "Let's move," he ordered, leading them towards the surface. The water churned around them as they emerged beneath the Zygon command ship. In the distance, they could see the bioluminescent creatures creating havoc among the smaller Zygon vessels. Massive tentacles of light whipping through the air. Taking advantage of the chaos, Derek and his team used their advanced suits to propel themselves out of the water and onto the hull of the command ship. They quickly located an access hatch and forced it open, slipping inside. The corridors of the Zygon ship were a maze of organic-looking technology, pulsing with an eerie alien light. Derek's team moved swiftly, engaging Zygon soldiers in close-quarters combat. Their amphibious abilities gave them a distinct advantage in the ship's artificial gravity, allowing them to outmaneuver their foes. As they fought their way towards the command center, Derek could hear the sounds of battle raging outside. He hoped Ava was safe, coordinating the defense of her world. Finally, they reached the ship's nerve center. Derek's team burst through the doors, catching the Zygon leaders off guard. A fierce firefight erupted, energy weapons scorching the air as both sides took cover behind alien consoles. Using hand signals, Derek directed his team to flank the Zygons. He then made a daring move, diving across the room to reach the main control panel. His fingers flew over the unfamiliar interface, searching for a way to shut down the ship's systems. Just as he thought he had found the right sequence, a Zygon commander lunged at him. Derek twisted, narrowly avoiding the alien's claws. They grappled, tumbling across the floor of the command center. As they fought, Derek's hand slammed against a prominent button on a nearby console. Suddenly, the ship's engines whined and sputtered. The entire vessel shuddered, beginning to lose altitude. Derek broke free from the Zygon's grasp and scrambled to his feet. "We need to go now," he shouted to his team. They fought their way back through the ship, which was now tilting dangerously. As they reached the outer hull, Derek saw other Zygon vessels beginning to falter and fall. Leaping from the doomed command ship, Derek and his team plunged back into the waters of Aquarius Prime. As they swam towards the city, they could see the Denobulan forces pressing their advantage, driving back the disorganized Zygon troops. Breaching the surface near the royal palace, Derek's heart leapt as he saw Ava coordinating the counterattack. Their eyes met across the battlefield, a moment of connection amidst the chaos. As the last Zygon ships retreated or fell from the sky, a cheer went up from the Denobulan forces. Derek made his way to Ava, and they embraced, the adrenaline of battle still coursing through their veins. "We did it," Ava breathed, her eyes shining with relief and pride. Derek nodded, but his expression remained serious. "We won the battle," he said. "But I found something on the Zygon ship. Information that suggests this invasion was just the beginning of something much bigger." Ava's brow furrowed with concern. "What do you mean?" Before Derek could answer, King Zorn approached, flanked by his advisors. "You've saved our world," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "But I fear our troubles are nowhere near the end." As the group turned to survey the battle-scarred city, Derek knew that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The future of Aquarius Prime, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Whatever came next, he and Ava would face it together. Together, as they always had. In the days that followed the Zygon invasion, Aquarius Prime buzzed with activity. The city's inhabitants worked tirelessly to repair the damage, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with renewed hope and grit. Derek and Ava found themselves at the heart of the reconstruction efforts, their unique blend of human ingenuity and Denobulan knowledge proving invaluable. As they supervised the repair of a damaged underwater transport tube, King Zorn approached them, his royal entourage in tow. The king's expression was grave, yet there was a glimmer of something else in his eyes. Pride, perhaps, or a newfound respect. "Derek, Princess Ava," he began, his voice carrying the weight of his position. "Your actions during the invasion haven't gone unnoticed. You've demonstrated a level of cooperation between our species that I once thought impossible." Derek and Ava exchanged a quick glance, unsure of where this was leading. King Zorn continued, "In light of recent events and the looming threat of this shadowy organization, I've come to a decision." He paused, his bioluminescent patterns shifting in what Derek had come to recognize as contemplation. "Derek, I'm appointing you as Aquarius Prime's first human ambassador." The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the gathered Denobulans. Derek stood speechless for a moment, the implications of this appointment sinking in. "Your Majesty," he finally managed, "I'm honored. But are you sure? I'm still learning so much about your world." The king's patterns pulsed with amusement. "That's precisely why you're the perfect choice. Your perspective, your ability to bridge our two cultures, it's exactly what we need in these uncertain times." Ava beamed at Derek, her hand finding his beneath the water. "He's right," she said softly. "You've already done so much for our people. This is a chance to do even more." Over the next few weeks, Derek threw himself into his new role with characteristic drive. He worked alongside Ava to implement the ancient amphibious technology on a larger scale, overseeing the adaptation of volunteers eager to embrace their evolutionary potential. One evening, as they were reviewing plans for a new hybrid living space designed to accommodate both fully aquatic and amphibious Denobulans, Derek received an unexpected transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the face of Admiral Chen, his former commanding officer on Earth. "Derek," the Admiral said, his tone a mix of pride and urgency, "word of your actions has reached Earth. The scientific community is in an uproar, in a good way. They're clamoring for more information about Aquarius Prime and the Denobulans." Derek leaned forward, intrigued. "What are you saying, sir?" "We're assembling a delegation. Scientists, diplomats, the works. We're requesting permission to visit Aquarius Prime. This could be the beginning of a formal alliance between our worlds. The news sent a jolt of excitement through Derek. He glanced at Ava, who nodded encouragingly. I'll speak with King Zorn immediately, Derek replied. We'll make this happen, Admiral. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. With King Zorn's enthusiastic approval, Derek and Ava took charge of preparing for the human delegation's visit. They designed a series of cultural exchange events, including an underwater concert that would showcase denobulan bioluminescent artistry alongside human music. As the day of the delegation's arrival drew near, Derek found himself standing before a newly constructed airlock system. It was designed to allow the human visitors to experience the wonders of Aquarius Prime safely. He turned to Ava, who was adjusting the settings on a nearby control panel. Are you ready for this? He asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. Ava's skin patterns shifted in a way that Derek had come to recognize as her equivalent of a reassuring smile. We've faced Zygon invasions and ancient technologies. I think we can handle a few awestruck scientists. The airlock hissed open, and the human delegation stepped through. Derek watched with a mix of pride and nostalgia as his fellow humans took their first looks at the underwater world of Aquarius Prime. Their expressions of wonder and amazement mirrored his own from not so long ago. Leading the group was Dr. Samantha Reeves, a renowned marine biologist. Her eyes were wide as she took in the bioluminescent marvels of the denobulan city. It's beyond anything we could have imagined, she breathed, pressing a hand against the transparent wall of the observation dome. Derek stepped forward, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Welcome to Aquarius Prime, Dr. Reeves. We have so much to show you. As he began to guide the delegation through the underwater marvels of his adopted home, Derek caught Ava's eye. She was watching the proceedings with a mixture of curiosity and joy. In that moment, he realized that this visit was more than just a diplomatic milestone. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both their worlds, one they would write together. The human scientists marveled at the advanced denobulan technology, while the diplomats engaged in earnest conversations with King Zorn and his advisors. Derek and Ava found themselves at the center of it all, bridging the gap between two vastly different cultures. As night fell and the bioluminescent lights of the city glowed even brighter, Derek led the human delegation to a specially prepared chamber for the cultural exchange concert. The excitement in the air was palpable as both humans and denobulans gathered, eager to experience something truly unique. The chamber darkened, and for a moment all was still. Then a soft, haunting melody began to play, the opening notes of a human composition. Suddenly, the water around them came alive with light. Denobulan performers swam in intricate patterns, their bioluminescent skin creating a dazzling display that pulsed and swirled in time with the music. As the performance reached its crescendo, Derek felt Ava's hand slip into his. He turned to her, seeing the joy and hope for the future reflected in her eyes. Together, they watched as their two worlds began to harmonize in ways they had never thought possible.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.